The maid who saved the millionaire with a phrase, "Don't enter this room, you're in danger." Emma Johnson adjusted the strap of her apron as she ascended the steps of the luxurious building on Paseo de la Reforma. Los Angeles still pulsed with life, even late at night, but Emma knew that inside, the atmosphere would be entirely different. Empty, cold, and marked only by the sound of her own footsteps echoing down the pristine halls. On this shift, as always, it would be just her, the glow of the computers in sleep mode, and the documents hastily left scattered across the desks. The routine was exhausting, yet Emma could not afford to complain. She cleaned each floor as if preparing a stage, an arena that would never be hers, but one that fed her dreams. With every polished glass, every trash can emptied, she imagined herself readying for something grander. The weight of bills and medical debts always lingered in her thoughts, but there was something inside her that refused to surrender to the monotony. One day, she believed, things would change. After hours of organizing chairs and erasing the traces left by hasty executives, Emma allowed herself a moment to look around. In the conference room on the 22nd floor, she briefly flipped through an abandoned magazine. It was an issue about management strategies and innovation. "Strategies to turn the impossible into possible," one headline read. She chuckled softly, then discreetly tore the page, folded it carefully, and tucked it into her pocket. It wasn't theft, it was inspiration. When she returned home, the contrast was overwhelming. The bustling streets of Brooklyn, alive despite the chaos, reminded her how much her family depended on her. She opened the door to their modest apartment and was greeted by Margaret, who was already awake despite the early hour. "Sweetheart, I left you some soup. It's not much, but it'll warm you up," her mother said. Margaret, a retired seamstress, never stopped working. Her hands, weathered by time and arthritis, still gripped the needle with determination. Emma knew the little money her mother managed to contribute came with great sacrifice. Across the room, Olivia slept deeply on the couch. Her younger sister was still fragile, recovering from surgery that had drained what remained of the family's savings. "How is she today, Mom?" Emma asked as she removed her shoes. "She had less pain, thank God. I'll go get the medicine tomorrow," her mother replied, not lifting her eyes from the fabric she was stitching. Despite all the hardships, Emma kept a smile on her face. The small image of the Virgin of Guadalupe hanging on the wall was her comfort. Every night before bed, she would say a silent prayer. "Thank you for the strength, Virgin. Please take care of them while I do my best." On her days off, Emma spent hours flipping through borrowed books, jotting down notes on business management. It was her way of preparing for the future she dreamed of, even though she knew enrolling at UNAM seemed a distant goal. The tuition fees were a reality she still had no solution for, but that didn't stop her from trying. In the limited space between exhausting shifts and caring for her family, Emma found time to dream. It was in those moments that she remembered what she had observed in the hallways and offices of Paseo de la Reforma. They speak with confidence, always with clarity. That must be what drives the business world, she reflected. Lying in her narrow bed, Emma wrote down the phrases she overheard at work. Cash flow, strategic planning, long-term investment. She didn't fully understand the meaning of many of them, but she knew that one day they would make sense. She observed how people moved, talked, and gestured. Studying the habits and strategies of entrepreneurs had become part of her routine, something that made her feel less invisible. Even on the hardest days, Emma never lost hope. She knew the path would be long, but inside her burned a determination no one could extinguish. As she closed her eyes, finally ready to rest, she thought about what it would be like to sit at one of those tables she only cleaned today. One day, it will be my turn, Emma Johnson began her shift as usual that night. The building, immense and silent, was a familiar stage, but tonight it felt somehow more unsettling. The silence was thicker than usual, making her footsteps echo on the 22nd floor. As she wiped down the glass of one of the doors, she glanced quickly at the city lights beyond the windows. Despite her exhaustion, those lights gave her a sense of possibility. What she didn't know was that tonight, something was about to change her life forever. Around midnight, as Emma was preparing to finish cleaning one of the smaller rooms, she heard an unusual sound coming from the hallway. She froze, tilting her head slightly. Voices. A muffled conversation came from the main conference room, something very unusual at this hour. Emma knew that by this time of night, almost everyone had already left the building. Her movements stopped, and she crept closer, holding the cleaning cloth like a shield. Reaching the slightly ajar door, she realized the lights were still on. Intrigued, she decided to spy through the crack, but the angles didn't quite help. With her heart pounding and her curiosity growing, she crouched down and slipped quietly toward a partially covered partition. There, hidden in the shadows, she managed to catch sight of 3 figures in the room. The first was unmistakable: William Thompson, the powerful billionaire whose face she'd seen in countless magazines and articles. Next to him, a middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, whom Emma assumed to be a lawyer, was flipping through a thick envelope of documents, and completing the trio was Sarah Williams, Thompson's personal assistant, looking more tense than usual. Emma held her breath. She knew she shouldn't be there, but curiosity paralyzed her. She watched as Sarah gestured animatedly, her voice trying to sound confident, though there was something in her tone that came across calculated. "William, this is an excellent opportunity to simplify the tax paperwork. The advisors have already given their approval. We just need your signature," Sarah said, pushing the contract toward him. William seemed hesitant. He rubbed his chin as he analyzed the papers in front of him. "Simplify the tax paperwork. That sounds like a euphemism," he replied, a half-smile betraying his wariness. The lawyer interjected, attempting to ease William's concerns, while Sarah pressed on, now with a hint of impatience. "It's just a formality, William. There's no risk involved. It's something that's already been discussed with the team." A chill ran down Emma's spine. There was something forced in Sarah's words, almost as if she were desperate for William to sign the papers. The woman, usually so composed, now had a nervous gleam in her eyes. Emma gripped the cleaning cloth tighter, a growing unease building inside her. Finally, William stood, adjusting his suit. "I'll review this more thoroughly tomorrow. I don't like making important decisions in the middle of the night." Sarah tried to mask her frustration, but her smile wavered. The lawyer simply gathered the documents and slipped them back into the envelope. After exchanging a few last words, the 3 of them left the room, turned off the lights, and walked down the hallway. Emma stayed still for a few minutes, trying to process what she had just witnessed. When she finally gathered the courage to leave her hiding spot, something caught her eye. One of the contracts had been left on the table. Her eyes immediately locked onto the document, and the pull of curiosity was stronger than reason. She approached and began to read. The language was complex, but she recognized terms that hinted at suspicious financial manipulation. Emma felt her heart race even faster. With every line she read, the conviction that William was about to fall into a trap grew stronger. If you're watching this far, I'm sure you're enjoying it, so I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Emma Johnson couldn't sleep that morning. Her eyes locked on the ceiling of her tiny Brooklyn apartment, reflecting the whirlwind of thoughts consuming her. She knew staying silent would be easier, but she couldn't unsee what she had read in the forgotten contract. William Thompson was being manipulated, and something deep within her insisted she had to warn him before it was too late. By 7 o'clock, Emma was already dressed. Though she wasn't scheduled to work that morning, she decided to return to the building. Each step toward the lobby tightened the coil of tension in her chest. What if he doesn't believe me? What if Sarah finds out what I've done? Her trembling fingers clutched the small crucifix around her neck as if drawing strength from it. Fear gnawed at her resolve, but something stronger propelled her forward, a sense that doing the right thing mattered more than her fear. Inside the building, she was greeted by Robert, the security guard, his curious eyes narrowing as he spotted her. Raising an eyebrow, he asked, "Emma, forgot something during your shift?" She forced a smile, but her tense expression betrayed her unease. "No. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson. It's urgent," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. Robert hesitated, his gaze lingering on her. He knew Emma well enough to trust she wasn't the type to cause trouble. "He just got here. You'll find him in the lobby coming out of the elevator," he said, pointing subtly. Emma's heart pounded as she saw William Thompson stepping out of the elevator. Dressed impeccably in a grey suit, his sharp expression was fixed on the phone in his hand. Behind him, Sarah and another assistant hurried along, juggling files and documents. Emma took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and stepped forward, her resolve outweighing her anxiety. "Mr. Thompson," she called, extending her hand to block his path. "Please, I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Her voice wavered but held firm. Sarah's face twisted into a scowl, startled by the audacity of the janitorial staff. "What's going on here?" she snapped, her irritation clear. William lifted his gaze from his phone, his curiosity piqued. "You're one of the cleaning staff, right?" he asked, his tone polite but distant. Emma nodded, inhaling deeply. "Yes, sir. But what I have to say can't wait." Her eyes met his with a sincerity that carried more weight than her words. William hesitated, studying her. Then, with a subtle motion, he dismissed Sarah and the others. "Speak," he said, his tone a blend of authority and intrigue. Emma swallowed hard, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Don't go into that meeting room. You're in danger." William's expression shifted instantly, his curiosity sharpening into suspicion. "What kind of danger? Explain," he demanded, folding his arms. Quickly, Emma recounted the events of the previous night, Sarah's suspicious conversation, the documents left behind, and the strange unease that had driven her to investigate. "I know I shouldn't have listened, but something didn't feel right. I found a contract in the room afterward. I didn't understand all of it, but it looked dangerous for you," she confessed, her voice trembling with urgency. William stood silent for a moment, processing her words. Across the lobby, Sarah lingered, pacing anxiously, her attempts to eavesdrop evident. "Are you suggesting Sarah and my legal team are deceiving me?" he asked, his tone laced with skepticism. Emma nodded, her hands clenched as though gripping a volatile secret. The weight of her earnestness, however, made him pause. "All right," he said finally. "Keep this between us for now." He pulled out his phone, placing a curt call to his security team. "I want last night's contracts reviewed immediately," he ordered, before turning back to Emma. "If you're right, you've done me a great service. If you're wrong, I hope you understand the risks of such interference." Emma nodded again, relief mingling with lingering fear. She had been heard, but she knew this was only the beginning. The next day dawned heavy with tension. William, still rattled by Emma's warning, wasted no time in taking action. A mix of doubt and anger churned within him. If her suspicions were true, it meant betrayal from the people closest to him. At the office, he summoned his most trusted aides, James Wilson, head of security, and John Davis, the CFO. "Review every detail of these documents," William ordered. "I want answers before the day is over." Meanwhile, Emma struggled to resume her routine. The enormity of her actions weighed on her, and she knew the consequences wouldn't be kind. During her break, Robert noticed her unease and handed her a cup of coffee. "You all right, Emma? "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said with a concerned smile. "Maybe I have," she murmured, avoiding his gaze and keeping her fear to herself. By the end of the day, James and John's investigation unearthed shocking truths. The documents were expertly forged, a sophisticated attempt to implicate Thompson Holdings in fraudulent dealings with offshore shell companies. These fake entities were set up to siphon funds and tarnish William's reputation. The scheme was meticulously crafted, but the details revealed its architects. Sarah Williams had drafted parts of the documents and used her position to pass sensitive information to co-conspirators within the company. When William received the preliminary report, his face darkened with fury. He realized Sarah wasn't acting alone. A deeper probe pointed to Michael Anderson, a senior director on the board, as a key player in the conspiracy. "This isn't just betrayal," William muttered to James, his voice cold with anger. "It's an attempt to destroy me entirely." Meanwhile, word of Emma's warning to William began to spread in a subtle but unsettling manner. Sarah, realizing the plan had been compromised, grew suspicious that Emma knew more than she should. Anticipating the danger this posed, William acted swiftly. "She's not at fault for being in the wrong place at the right time," he told James. "I won't allow her or her family to become targets because of me." Emma was summoned to the security office at the start of the evening, her anxiety deepening with each step. When she arrived, she found James waiting for her. He was a broad-shouldered man with a piercing gaze that seemed to cut through pretense. "Emma," he began, his voice steady and reassuring, "you did the right thing. But unfortunately, it's placed you in a precarious position." He handed her a disposable phone, carefully explaining how to use it if anything went wrong. "From now on, there will be a car outside your door every night, and someone from my team will escort you to work. Your family will also be monitored. This is just a precaution," he added, trying to ease her apprehension. At home, Emma struggled to explain to her mother and sister why a black car with tinted windows now sat parked on their corner every evening. "It's just for safety, Mom. That's all," she said, attempting to conceal the gravity of the situation. But Margaret, with her quiet wisdom, wasn't fooled. "I know you're in trouble, Emma. You don't need to say anything, but pray. The Virgin will always protect us," she said, pressing her small rosary into Emma's hands. The situation escalated quickly. The next night, as Emma exited the building, she noticed a strange man standing near the security car. He appeared casual, but his eyes tracked her every movement with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. "Is everything okay, Emma?" the driver asked, catching her nervous glance. "Yes, I just got distracted," she replied, masking her unease with a strained smile. Emma stepped into the night, her shoulders tight with tension. The car was parked where it should be, but the streets around Brooklyn felt darker and emptier than usual. As she approached, she noticed the man again. He was tall, rough-looking, with worn clothes and a demeanor that oozed quiet menace. Emma kept her head down, but as she passed him, he muttered in a low, threatening voice, "Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong, girl. Things could go very badly for you and your family." For a moment, Emma froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, and her thoughts raced, but she forced her legs to move, quickening her steps toward the car. The driver noticed her pale face as she climbed in. "Miss Johnson, is something wrong?" he asked. She nodded numbly, too shaken to speak. As the car carried her home, the stranger's words echoed in her mind, leaving a heavy weight she couldn't shake. At home, Emma found Margaret sewing quietly on the couch while Olivia read a book nearby. The familiar scene offered a fleeting sense of calm, but Emma knew she couldn't ignore the growing threat. She retreated to her room, locking the door behind her, and pulled out the disposable phone James had given her. Her hands trembled as she dialed, and to her surprise, William Thompson himself answered. "Emma, what happened? he asked, his voice steady and commanding yet reassuring. She recounted the encounter with the man near the car, her voice still shaking. William listened intently, his silence heavy with calculation. When he finally spoke, his tone was resolute. "I'm reinforcing your security. They're trying to scare you because they know you're a threat. Don't let fear control you, Emma. I promise you, no harm will come to you or your family while I'm in charge." The following morning, an armed guard was stationed outside the Johnson family home. While the gesture was reassuring, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her life had irrevocably changed. A few days later, as she left her house, she noticed something peculiar taped to the front door. A handwritten note, scrawled in jagged letters, bore a chilling message: "Silence is golden." Her stomach churned as she scanned the street. The security car was parked nearby, but no one else seemed to be around. The message was clear. They were watching and waiting. She quickly climbed into the car, her expression pale and strained. The driver noticed her discomfort. "Is everything all right, miss?" he asked. "There's something strange on my door," she managed to say, her voice unsteady. At work, Emma went straight to William's office. He was surrounded by papers, but stood as she entered, sensing the urgency in her demeanor. She placed the note on his desk and explained what had happened. William's jaw tightened as he examined it, his expression darkening. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered, before picking up his phone. "James, I need surveillance tightened immediately, and find out who's responsible for this." Despite the increased security measures, Emma felt the grip of fear tightening around her. That evening, as she returned home, she resolved to protect her family at any cost. Seeing Margaret and Olivia, their familiar warmth grounding her, she made a difficult decision. She wouldn't back down. If she did, she'd be putting them in even greater danger. She would continue helping William, no matter the risks. The next morning, a sleek black car pulled up outside the Johnson home. This time it wasn't James or the usual driver. William Thompson stepped out, impeccably dressed, but carrying a hint of casualness in his demeanor. Margaret greeted him with surprise, but welcomed him warmly. "Mr. Thompson, what an honor to have you here. Please, come in." William entered and sat at the kitchen table, where Emma waited, visibly nervous. He looked at her with a serious expression, though his presence was strangely reassuring. "Emma," he began, "I needed to see you personally to make this clear. No one will harm you or your family while I'm here. I won't let these people win. You had the courage to help me, and now it's my turn to protect you." His words brought an unexpected wave of relief over Emma. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't facing this battle alone. Emma Johnson arrived at work that evening with a persistent unease gnawing at her. Since the recent threats, every sound in the building seemed amplified, every shadow heavier with tension. Still, she pressed on. Giving up now would mean abandoning William to navigate a sea of betrayals alone. Steeling herself, she took a deep breath and stepped onto the 22nd floor, determined to focus on her routine. As she moved through the corridors, something caught her eye. The door to Sarah Williams's office was ajar. That was unusual. Sarah was meticulous, a perfectionist who never left her office unsecured, especially after recent events. Emma's curiosity stirred. She approached cautiously, peering through the crack in the door. The lights were off, but a faint glow emanated from the desk, casting an eerie light across the room. Emma hesitated before stepping inside, her mind already forming excuses should someone find her there. The office was silent, save for the faint hum of the city outside. On the desk, a stack of disorganized papers caught her attention. At the top was a contract, its date marked weeks earlier. But the signatures were glaringly counterfeit. William Thompson's name appeared multiple times, but the handwriting wasn't his. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She knew she shouldn't be there, but something drove her to dig deeper. Carefully, she sifted through the papers, her fingers trembling. Among them were spreadsheets and financial statements. At first glance, the data was overwhelming, but certain details leapt out. Corporate names paired with staggeringly large sums. "Shell companies," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The listed accounts pointed to well-known tax havens, knowledge she'd gleaned from listening to William's strategic discussions. Then she found something even more damning. Buried in the pile were encrypted emails between Sarah and two names Emma recognized immediately: Michael Anderson and Jessica Clark, both senior board members of Thompson Holdings. The messages weren't just correspondence, they were blueprints for sabotage. Annotations outlined methods to destabilize William's leadership and ensure his removal from the presidency. Emma felt a chill race down her spine. Sarah wasn't acting alone. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated, large-scale conspiracy. Emma acted quickly, snapping photos of the documents with her phone. She couldn't risk taking anything from the office, but she could capture the evidence. Ensuring everything was left as she'd found it, she slipped out as quietly as she had entered. Back in the hallway, her heart raced, but a sense of resolve washed over her. William needed to see this, and he needed to see it now. When her shift ended, Emma headed straight to William's office, only to find it empty. Determined, she called James, who arranged for her to meet William at his home. When she arrived, he greeted her with his usual gravity, but his expression changed the moment she showed him the photos on her phone. Shock rippled across his face as he flipped through the images, studying every detail. "This is far worse than we imagined," William muttered, his voice taut with controlled fury. Beside him, James had already begun making calls, issuing orders to bolster security measures. "Emma, this puts you in even greater danger," William said, standing and crossing his arms. "I can't risk your safety. You'll need to take a leave from work and move to a secure location. James will handle the arrangements." Emma hesitated. "I can't leave my mother and sister," she replied, her voice laced with doubt. William's gaze locked onto hers, his tone unwavering. "They'll be protected too. This isn't optional, Emma. It's necessary." Reluctantly, she agreed. The following day, Emma and her family were relocated to a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood, with round-the-clock security stationed nearby. Despite the precautions, Emma couldn't shake the weight of her responsibility. This wasn't just about her safety, it was about protecting William and the future of the company. Meanwhile, a deeper analysis of the documents revealed even more sinister details. The encrypted emails from Sarah's office included precise instructions for manipulating stock values and funneling company funds into accounts tied to Michael and Jessica. Sarah was clearly the mastermind, but the scheme's scope indicated a web of complicit individuals. The more William uncovered, the more dangerous the situation became for Emma. Each revelation only sharpened the urgency of exposing the conspirators before it was too late. The air in the Thompson Holdings boardroom was stifling, heavy with unspoken tension. Around the polished mahogany table sat the council members, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and unease. Sarah Williams, poised and impeccably dressed, sat with her fingers interlocked, lightly tapping the surface of the table. Michael Anderson, usually quick to dominate discussions, was uncharacteristically silent, while Jessica Clark's artificial smile betrayed the anxiety glinting in her eyes. William Thompson entered precisely on time, flanked by James Wilson and John Davis, the company's CFO. The room fell into an instant hush. Known for his composure, William's face now carried a rare intensity, his grave demeanor commanding attention. He placed a folder on the table, his gaze sweeping across the room like a warning. "I've called this meeting to address a matter of critical importance, one that threatens the integrity of this company," he began, his voice steady but charged with emotion. Sarah leaned forward slightly, her lips curling into a mocking smile. "William, What's this about? A meeting without an agenda? I hope we're not here because of one of your baseless suspicions, she quipped, her tone feigning nonchalance. William ignored her jab and flipped open the folder. Over the past few weeks, my security team, aided by internal documents, has uncovered a fraudulent scheme siphoning millions of dollars from Thompson Holdings into offshore accounts. Today, I'm presenting the evidence and the names of those responsible. He fixed his eyes on Sarah as he spoke, and for a fleeting moment, her composed mask cracked. She quickly regained her composure, but her widened eyes had betrayed her. As William laid out the evidence, the screen at the head of the room lit up with projections of financial data, decoded emails, and falsified contracts. He meticulously connected the dots, showing how funds were funneled through shell companies and how Sarah's signature appeared repeatedly as the intermediary. Each document and intercepted communication built the case further, implicating not just Sarah but also Michael Anderson and Jessica Clark. "This is absurd!" Sarah shot to her feet, her voice trembling as she tried to project indignation. "You're twisting the facts to frame me. Everyone here knows my loyalty to this company." Michael and Jessica exchanged strained glances, but said nothing. Their unease was palpable. William remained unflinching, his voice calm but cutting. "If you're loyal, Sarah, explain this." He clicked to reveal an email exchange, explicitly outlining the steps of the fraudulent scheme. Conversations between Sarah, Michael, and Jessica. The documents don't lie, and as of this morning, financial investigators are tracing the accounts linked to these transactions. "This is just the beginning," Michael stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. "William, I had no idea. Sarah assured me these were routine transactions. She tricked me into—" Jessica, unable to meet William's fierce gaze, lowered her head, her silence more damning than any words. Realizing she was losing control, Sarah's veneer of confidence crumbled. "This is a setup!" she yelled, her voice shaky. "You've staged all of this to consolidate your power and get rid of me." James stood abruptly, his deep voice cutting through the room. "Sarah, the evidence is irrefutable. Every transaction, every email, it all leads back to you and your accomplices. I suggest you consider your next words carefully." The other board members, silent until now, began murmuring among themselves. The weight of the evidence was undeniable. The room's atmosphere shifted, the tide turning irreversibly against Sarah. William closed the folder with finality, his gaze sweeping over the group. "I trusted all of you to help lead this company. Sarah, Michael, and Jessica have betrayed that trust in a way that cannot be overlooked. I ask the remaining board members to vote on Sarah's immediate termination and the launch of official investigations into Michael and Jessica." The vote was swift and unanimous. Sarah was officially dismissed, and Michael and Jessica were suspended pending further investigation. As security escorted Sarah out of the building, her protests echoed through the halls. "This isn't over," she shouted. "The truth will come out." Left alone with James, William stared at the documents scattered across the table. His expression was dark, his voice low. "This is far from over. They won't go down without a fight." The fallout was swift, and news of Sarah's termination and the investigations into Michael and Jessica spread like wildfire. Yet, the silence that followed felt ominous, like the calm before a storm. Despite the constant protection around her, Emma Johnson sensed the danger wasn't over. Sarah was too cunning to accept defeat, and Michael, humiliated, wouldn't let the matter rest. William, meanwhile, threw himself into fortifying security, knowing full well that retaliation was inevitable. His fears were confirmed sooner than expected. In the pre-dawn hours of a chilly Tuesday, Emma was returning home with her mother in one of the security vehicles provided by William's team. The streets of Brooklyn were quiet, the night calm, until the silence was shattered by the sharp crack of gunfire. A bullet smashed through the rear window, sending shards of glass flying. Emma instinctively shielded her mother, her heart pounding in terror as the driver sped up. "Is everyone okay?" the driver shouted, his voice taut with urgency. "My mother's fine," Emma called back, her voice trembling. "Just get us out of here!" The car swerved through the narrow streets, the sound of more gunfire trailing them. Miraculously, the bullets missed their target, and the driver managed to lose the attackers. When they finally arrived at the safe house, Emma's hands were still shaking as she helped her mother inside. Margaret, though visibly shaken, was unhurt. Sitting beside her mother, Emma gripped Margaret's hand tightly. "Mum, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Margaret, her voice steady despite her fear, replied firmly, "You're fighting for something important, Emma. Don't let fear stop you." When William received news of the attack, his usual calm demeanor was replaced by seething anger. He immediately called James, demanding answers and ordering increased protection for Emma and her family. But the attack was more than just a warning. It was a declaration of war. Sarah and Michael had crossed a line, and William knew there was no turning back. The battle had only just begun. The following day, William met with one of his most influential contacts, an old ally from the private intelligence sector. "I need to locate Sarah Williams," he said, sliding a folder filled with preliminary information across the table. "She's gone off the grid, but she can't have gone far. And this time I want her to know we're closing in." As William worked behind the scenes, Emma grappled with her own internal struggle. The attack had shaken her to the core. Every decision she made alongside William felt like it placed her mother and sister in even greater danger. Yet giving up would mean surrendering to those who had already wreaked so much havoc. It was a cruel choice. But as her eyes landed on the photograph of her late father on the bookshelf, she remembered his words. Doing the right thing often demands courage. "I won't give up," she whispered to herself, clutching the rosary her mother had given her. "They won't win." Meanwhile, William's search bore fruit. Using his contacts, he traced Sarah to a boutique hotel in Miami. Surrounded by hired guards, Sarah seemed confident she was safe, but William knew it was only a matter of time before she slipped up. He instructed James to monitor her movements while tightening Emma's security even further. That evening, William paid Emma a personal visit. He found her in the temporary apartment, sitting with Margaret and Olivia, both doing their best to mask their unease. "Emma," he said, his voice unusually gentle as he entered, "I know you're exhausted. What happened was terrifying, but none of this is your fault. I promise you, those responsible will pay for what they've done." For the first time in days, Emma felt a flicker of hope. William wasn't just a powerful man, he was someone committed to justice. She resolved to stand by his side until the very end. In Miami, the scene at the luxury hotel appeared serene, the sun gleaming off the turquoise waters surrounding the property. To an outsider, it seemed like paradise. But inside, Sarah Williams lived in a state of constant vigilance. Private guards hovered nearby, and she scrutinized every call she received. She could feel William's pursuit drawing ever closer, a weight pressing down on her every move. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former contact of James Wilson, now working in private security, reported a woman matching Sarah's description, registered under a false name. William wasted no time. He orchestrated a discreet yet efficient operation to apprehend her. "I don't want her to have the chance to run or destroy any evidence," he instructed as James led the team on the ground. Meanwhile, Emma, though physically removed from the company, continued to contribute. Her meticulous instincts led to a major discovery. Among archived emails in her corporate account, she found spreadsheets detailing financial transactions linked directly to Michael Anderson. The figures were staggering, and the destinations, offshore accounts in known tax havens, left no doubt. Michael was deeply involved in money laundering and large-scale corruption. She sent the documents to William immediately. "This is another piece of the puzzle, Emma," William said with his characteristic determination. "You're making a real difference." Later that day, the operation in Miami was set in motion. James and his team infiltrated the hotel, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sarah was caught off guard during breakfast, surrounded by agents presenting an arrest warrant. She tried to resist, but her usual confidence crumbled as handcuffs snapped around her wrists. "This is a mistake," she screamed. "You're making a huge error." But her protests fell on deaf ears. However, the triumph of capturing Sarah brought a fresh complication. Jessica Clark vanished as soon as she learned the news. All she left behind was a burner phone, its messages wiped clean, leaving a cold, untraceable trail. William, unshaken, prepared for the chase. "She can run, but she won't get far. Her resources are limited, and we have eyes everywhere," he assured James, deploying his network to track her down. With Sarah in custody and Michael under scrutiny, Emma was summoned to testify. The thought of taking the stand in such a high-profile case filled her with anxiety, but William's unwavering presence gave her strength. In court, her poised and resolute demeanor surprised everyone. "I was just a cleaning employee," she said, her voice steady but laden with emotion. "But I saw what many ignored. I did what I did because I believe the truth must come to light." Her testimony not only bolstered the case against Sarah and Michael, but also turned her into a symbol of integrity and courage in the face of corruption. As the case progressed, a new revelation came to light. Documents seized from Sarah's belongings exposed another conspirator, Kevin Harris, a council member known for his low profile and discreet demeanor. The records revealed Kevin had facilitated key transactions in the embezzlement scheme. For William, the betrayal hit like a blow. "You can't trust anyone," he confided to James as they strategized their next steps. The headquarters of Thompson Holdings was unrecognizable the next morning. The lobby was packed with cameras, journalists whispering to one another as they adjusted microphones and scribbled notes. William Thompson, known for his discretion, had called an extraordinary press conference, promising revelations that would send shockwaves through the corporate world. Beside him, Emma stood partially hidden behind the podium, her hands clasped tightly as she fought to calm her nerves. Never in her life had she imagined facing such a vast audience or playing such a pivotal role in a story of this magnitude. The event began with William thanking the press for their presence. His voice was calm and authoritative, carrying through the hall. In recent months, Thompson Holdings has faced one of the most severe crises in its history, orchestrated by individuals entrusted to protect this company, he began, his measured tone allowing the weight of his words to sink in. "Today, I will present irrefutable evidence exposing the culprits and celebrating the resilience and courage of those who fought for justice." As William presented documents, charts, and intercepted emails, the audience watched in rapt attention. Each piece of evidence painted a damning picture of the fraudulent network led by Sarah Williams, Michael Anderson, and their co-conspirators. Screens displayed the intricate web of transactions and deceit, while reporters scribbled furiously and camera flashes lit the room. "These actions nearly shattered the trust our clients and partners placed in Thompson Holdings," William declared, his voice resolute. "But we acted in time." The room hung on his every word, knowing the revelations would mark a turning point, not just for the company, but for the corporate world at large. When the moment came to acknowledge Emma, William paused deliberately. Turning to her, he extended his hand, encouraging her to step forward as she hesitated. "None of this would have been possible without the courage of one individual who chose to act when silence would have been easier," he began, his voice steady and resonant. "Emma Johnson, a humble worker, risked her life to reveal the truth. Her determination and integrity brought us to this moment." Emma swallowed hard, her heart pounding as she approached the microphone. The applause that erupted from the audience startled her, and tears welled up in her eyes. Taking a deep breath, she spoke, her voice trembling at first, but growing steadier with each word. "I'm not a hero," she said, her gaze sweeping the room. "I just did what I thought was right. I couldn't turn away from what I saw. I never imagined standing here today, but I believe that when we have the chance to fight for the truth, we must take it, no matter the cost." The reaction was electric. Reporters immediately began drafting headlines, hailing Emma as the voice of the unseen and a beacon of bravery. Her story of a cleaning worker who risked everything to confront the powerful resonated across the nation. Social media buzzed with messages of support and admiration, transforming Emma into a symbol of resilience and integrity. Days later, formal charges were filed against Sarah Williams, Michael Anderson, and their co-conspirators. The evidence was overwhelming, and they faced indictments for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Thompson Holdings, once teetering on the edge of collapse, began to regain its reputation, with investors publicly voicing their renewed confidence in Williams' leadership. The storm seemed to be passing at last. In a private meeting, Williams shared his vision for the future with Emma. "Your bravery changed not only this company but also my life," he said, his tone earnest. "I want to ensure you have the opportunities you deserve." He revealed plans for the Thompson Foundation, a new initiative dedicated to providing scholarships and professional training for underprivileged workers. "And you'll be its first beneficiary. I want you to study business administration, your dream, and all expenses will be covered." Emma was speechless. Tears filled her eyes as she struggled to find words. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, overwhelmed. This wasn't just a reward. It was the start of a new life, a future she had once believed impossible. The courthouse doors creaked open, their sound reverberating through the hushed courtroom. Sarah Williams entered, flanked by two officers, her head held high in a final act of defiance. Behind her, Michael Anderson followed, his face a mask of despair, the weight of his downfall visibly pressing on him. Television cameras captured every movement as Emma Johnson watched from the gallery, seated beside William Thompson. This was the culmination of months of turmoil, and justice was finally being served. The judge's voice rang out, steady and unwavering, as the sentences were delivered. Sarah and Michael were handed lengthy prison terms for conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering. A tense silence filled the room as the judge concluded, "This court will not tolerate abuses of power that harm society and erode public trust." Sarah's composure faltered, her trembling hands betraying her defeat. Michael lowered his head, his spirit utterly broken. Meanwhile, Jessica Clark, who had evaded the initial sweep, wasn't as fortunate in her escape attempt. She was arrested at Los Angeles International Airport, a suitcase packed with falsified documents and a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country in hand. Her capture brought a wave of relief to William and his team, marking the closure of a dark chapter. With the conspirators neutralized, William turned his focus to restructuring Thompson Holdings. Convening the remaining board members, he delivered a decisive mandate. "Our trust has been shaken, but it is not broken. From this day forward, ethics will be the foundation of every decision we make." He implemented rigorous compliance measures, ensuring transparency and accountability across the company. New board members with impeccable records were appointed to lead Thompson Holdings into a new era. Meanwhile, Emma's story continued to inspire the nation. Her actions not only exposed corruption, but also highlighted the importance of giving a voice to workers often overlooked. Companies across the country began introducing programs to hear employees' concerns and establish anonymous reporting channels. Without intending to, Emma had become a national symbol of courage and integrity, her story shared in classrooms, lectures, and documentaries. With the recovery of embezzled funds, Thomson Holdings began to reclaim its market position. Investors who had once hesitated returned, impressed by William's resolute handling of the crisis. Suspended projects resumed, and the company's stock prices rebounded, signaling a remarkable turnaround after months of uncertainty. During a press conference, William made a groundbreaking announcement. Thomson Holdings has not only weathered a crisis, but emerged stronger and wiser. Today, we're proud to announce the Thomson Institute, a program dedicated to empowering vulnerable youth through education and training. He paused, glancing toward Emma in the audience. This idea was inspired by someone who showed us that great change begins with small acts of courage. After the press conference, William approached Emma with a warm smile. "Are you ready for the next chapter?" he asked. Emma nodded, her voice filled with emotion. "I never imagined my life could change this much, Mr. Thomson. Thank you for believing in me." William extended his hand, his grip firm but reassuring. "It's you who gave us a reason to believe, Emma." The grand auditorium of Thomson Holdings was a masterpiece of elegance. Illuminated panels and company banners adorned the walls, casting a warm glow that complemented the carefully adjusted lighting. The audience, a mix of employees, partners, and special guests, filled every seat. At the center of the stage stood a polished podium, waiting for the evening's central figure. In the front row, Emma Johnson sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her nerves growing with every passing moment. It was still hard for her to grasp that this event was being held in her honor. The ceremony began with William Thomson stepping onto the stage, greeted by a wave of applause. With characteristic composure, he thanked everyone for their presence and began to recount the challenges the company had faced. Today is not just a day to celebrate our achievements as an organization. It's a day to honor the courage, ethics, and impact one person can have, regardless of their position. He turned toward Emma, a warm smile lighting up his face. "Emma Johnson, please join me on stage." Emma's heart raced as Margaret, seated beside her, squeezed her hand tightly, her eyes glistening with pride. Slowly, Emma rose, feeling the weight of every gaze upon her, and made her way to the stage. William greeted her with an embrace as the applause grew deafening. Struggling to contain her tears, Emma found herself standing under the spotlight. "Emma," William began, his voice steady and heartfelt, "your story has taught us all that strength doesn't come from the position we hold, but from the courage we show in the face of adversity. That is why Thomson Holdings is honored to award you a full scholarship to study business administration at the UNAM, so you can continue to transform lives and inspire us all." As the audience erupted into applause, Emma stepped forward to the microphone, her hands trembling. She took a moment to collect herself, her voice breaking slightly as she spoke. "I never imagined that someone like me, a simple worker, would be here today. I didn't do this alone. My mother, my sister, and those who believed in me were my strength. I promised to honor this opportunity with all my heart." In the audience, Margaret watched her daughter with tears streaming down her face. Each word felt like a culmination of years of sacrifices and sleepless nights. Beside her, Olivia beamed with pride, her smile never wavering as the crowd stood in ovation for Emma. A few weeks later, Emma began her journey at the UNAM. The sprawling campus buzzed with energy, filled with students and the hum of possibility. It felt like an entirely new world, and Emma carried the trepidation of someone unsure of how she would be received. To her surprise, many already knew her story. Classmates approached her with a mix of curiosity and admiration, eager to learn from her experiences. "You're amazing, Emma," said Natalie, a fellow student who quickly became a close friend. "I hope we can learn a lot from each other." With every class, Emma felt herself inching closer to her dreams. Concepts she once read about in borrowed books now came to life in classroom debates. Her professors saw the spark in her determination, encouraging her at every turn. Emma brought a unique perspective to discussions, often sharing insights rooted in her experiences. Her role in exposing the corruption at Thomson Holdings inspired lively conversations about ethics and leadership, challenging her peers to think beyond the textbook. Despite her busy schedule, Emma stayed in close contact with William, who had become more than a mentor. During one visit to the Thomson Holdings office, he invited her to the rooftop terrace for a private conversation. "Emma," he said, looking out over the city, "when you graduate, I want you to join us. Thomson Holdings needs people like you to help shape its future." Emma smiled, her resolve shining through. "I won't let you down, Mr. Thomson." Meanwhile, back at Thomson Holdings, the company had regained its former grandeur. The lobby, once weighed down by tension and uncertainty, now thrummed with renewed energy. William walked the halls with a clear purpose, greeting employees by name, a practice he had made a cornerstone of his leadership. "A company isn't just numbers," he often reminded his team in meetings. "It's people." In the wake of the scandal that nearly toppled the company, William implemented sweeping changes. Departments were restructured, audits became more rigorous, and a strict code of ethics was introduced. "This isn't just about preventing fraud," he explained during a council meeting. "It's about creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute and where integrity is the standard, not the exception." The company embraced cutting-edge technology to monitor transactions and ensure transparency at every level, becoming a model for others in the industry. These changes yielded quick results. Investors who had distanced themselves during the crisis began to return, drawn by the company's transparency and renewed commitment. William worked tirelessly to rebuild relationships with partners, emphasizing that Thomson Holdings hadn't just survived, it had evolved. Quarterly reports reflected this transformation, with growth figures surpassing expectations. "We're building something greater than we had before," William confided to James Wilson, "and it's because we learned from our mistakes." The most remarkable change, however, was within the company itself. Inspired by Emma Johnson's bravery, employees felt emboldened to report irregularities and suggest improvements. Small issues that once went unnoticed were now swiftly addressed. The ripple effect was so significant that William launched an anonymous feedback platform, encouraging open communication. "Emma showed us that even the smallest voices can carry the greatest truths," he remarked during the initiative's launch. Beyond the company walls, Emma's story and Thomson Holdings' transformation began to make waves globally. Esteemed publications like Forbes and the Wall Street Journal featured articles on the company's recovery and Emma's pivotal role. "A masterclass in ethics and leadership," one headline proclaimed. William and Emma were invited to speak at international conferences, sharing their journey and the lessons they had learned. Even as Emma balanced her studies, she accepted her role as a symbol of integrity with humility and a deep sense of responsibility. With momentum on his side, William took another bold step. He announced the launch of the Thomson Social Impact Fund, an initiative focused on empowering underprivileged youth and supporting workers. "Our experience taught us that a company's true value lies in its contribution to society," he declared at the inauguration. The fund offered scholarships, mentorship programs, and grants for community projects. Emma was invited to join the fund's advisory board, an opportunity she embraced enthusiastically as a way to give back. As the lights dimmed on the past and shone brightly on the future, Thomson Holdings stood as a testament to resilience and transformation. At its heart was Emma Johnson, a woman whose courage had not only changed her own life, but also inspired a legacy of integrity and hope. The impact of these actions reverberated far beyond the walls of the company. Other corporations, inspired by the example set by Thomson Holdings, began implementing similar initiatives. William frequently received messages from CEOs and business leaders eager to learn more about the changes he had introduced. For him, this was the ultimate triumph, turning a crisis into an opportunity to lead by example. At the close of that day, Emma received a message from William. "You're a part of all this. Never forget that what began with your courage brought us here." Emma smiled as she read the words. Sitting in her room, surrounded by university books and notes, she felt a profound sense of recognition for her efforts, something she had never expected. More than that, she realized that the future was being shaped by the values she had helped to champion. The clatter of keyboard keys filled the air in the shared office space, where Emma Johnson was taking her first steps as an intern at Thomson Holdings. Dressed in a modest grey suit, she diligently reviewed reports and organized presentations as the morning sunlight streamed through the large window. Balancing university and work was no easy feat, but Emma faced every challenge with the same determination that had brought her here. Everyone in the office seemed to know her. Whenever she passed by, smiles and greetings followed. It was more than respect, it was admiration. During her breaks, Emma often used the time to review her university notes. Though she was just starting her course, she was already applying the concepts she learned in class to her daily tasks. Her colleagues frequently sought her advice. "Emma, how do you keep everything so organized?" asked a junior analyst one day. Emma replied with a modest smile, "I've learned that small details can make all the difference. That's true for everything." But it wasn't just her office peers who found inspiration in Emma. Her story began to spread through the talks she started giving at schools and corporate events. Emma spoke about her journey with raw honesty, never shying away from the struggles she had faced. "It doesn't matter where you are now. What matters is where you want to go," she would tell attentive audiences of young dreamers and workers who saw themselves in her story. At each talk, Emma felt she was planting seeds of courage in others. Amid her packed schedule, her relationship with William Thomson evolved from that of boss and employee to mentor and mentee, and eventually to friendship. He frequently invited her to planning meetings, eager to hear her thoughts on new projects. During one such meeting, William proposed an idea for a campaign focused on strengthening inclusion within the company. "Emma, what do you think? Are we on the right track?" he asked. Emma carefully read through the documents before replying. "I think you are, but it would be even more impactful if we included real stories from employees. Show how the company can transform lives from the inside out." William nodded, impressed. "This is exactly why I value your input. Your perspective is always genuine." Not long after, Emma received an unexpected invitation. William called her to a meeting in his office, but this time, the tone was different. "Emma, as you know, we founded the Thomson Institute to support young people in vulnerable situations. We need someone who understands their needs, someone with heart and vision to lead it. I want you to take on this role." For a moment, Emma was speechless. "Mr. Thomson, I don't know if I'm ready for something this big." He smiled, his expression confident. "If anyone is ready, it's you. Your story and your dedication have already proven that." After a weekend of reflection and countless conversations with her mother and sister, Emma accepted the challenge. The Thomson Institute became her new professional home. Leading a dedicated team, Emma developed mentorship programs, scholarship initiatives, and training workshops for young people across Mexico. She visited communities, spoke with families, and listened to the stories that shaped her projects. Every decision she made was guided by the memory of where she had started, keeping her deeply connected to the people she aimed to help. Meanwhile, Emma's journey and the transformation of Thompson Holdings began to gain international attention. Prestigious publications like Forbes and the Wall Street Journal featured articles on the company's recovery and Emma's pivotal role. A lesson in ethics and leadership, one headline proclaimed. Both William and Emma were invited to speak at international conferences, sharing their experiences and the changes they had implemented. Emma, still balancing her studies at UNAM, had become a symbol of integrity. She accepted this newfound recognition with humility and the responsibility to inspire others. Buoyed by the momentum, William decided to take another bold step in his mission for social impact. He announced the launch of the Thompson Social Impact Fund, an initiative dedicated to empowering underprivileged youth and supporting hard-working individuals. What we've experienced has shown us that the true value of a company lies in its contribution to society, he declared at the inauguration event. The fund offered scholarships, mentorship programs, and financial support for community projects. Emma was invited to join the fund's board, an opportunity she embraced enthusiastically, seeing it as a chance to give back everything she had gained. The effects of these actions were felt far beyond the company's walls. Inspired by Thompson Holdings' example, other corporations began adopting similar measures. William often received inquiries from CEOs and business leaders eager to learn more about the transformative initiatives. To him, this was the ultimate achievement, turning a crisis into a chance to lead by example. At the end of a long day, Emma received a message from William. "You are part of all this. Never forget that what began with your courage brought us here." She smiled as she read it. Sitting in her room, surrounded by her books and university notes, she felt the weight of her efforts being acknowledged in a way she had never imagined. More than that, she knew the future was being shaped by the values she had fought to uphold. The rhythmic clatter of keyboard keys filled the air in the shared office where Emma Johnson was beginning her journey as an intern at Thompson Holdings. Dressed in a modest grey suit, she meticulously reviewed reports and prepared presentations as the morning sunlight poured through the expansive windows. Balancing university and work was no small feat, but Emma tackled each challenge with the same unwavering determination that had brought her here. Everyone in the office seemed to know her. Smiles and greetings followed her wherever she went. It was more than respect, it was admiration. During her breaks, Emma seized the opportunity to go over her university notes. Though she had only recently started her course, she was already applying the concepts she learned in class to her day-to-day tasks. Her co-workers often turned to her for advice. "Emma, how do you manage to keep everything so organized?" asked a junior analyst one day. Emma responded with a modest smile. "I've learned that paying attention to the little details can change everything. That applies to just about anything." Yet Emma's influence extended far beyond her office. Her story began to circulate through the talks she gave at schools and corporate events. Emma shared her journey with unflinching honesty, never shying away from the struggles she had faced. "It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you want to go," she told attentive audiences of young people seeking hope and workers who found pieces of themselves in her story. With each talk, Emma felt she was planting seeds of courage in others. Amid her packed schedule, Emma's relationship with William Thompson evolved from that of boss and employee to mentor and mentee, and eventually to a genuine friendship. William often invited her to planning meetings, valuing her perspective on new projects. During one such meeting, William proposed a campaign aimed at strengthening inclusion within the company. "Emma, what do you think? Are we headed in the right direction?" he asked. Emma carefully read through the documents before replying, "I think you are, but it would be even more powerful if we included real stories from employees." Show how the company can change lives from the inside out. William nodded, clearly impressed. This is exactly why I value your input. Your perspective is always authentic. Not long after, Emma received an unexpected invitation. William called her to a meeting in his office, but this time the tone was different. Emma, as you know, we established the Thompson Institute to support young people in vulnerable situations. We need someone who understands their needs, someone with the heart and vision to lead it. I want you to take on this role. For a moment, Emma was speechless. Mr. Thompson, I don't know if I'm ready for something this significant. He smiled, his expression full of confidence. If anyone is ready, it's you. Your story and dedication have already proven that. After a weekend of reflection and heartfelt conversations with her mother and sister, Emma accepted the challenge. The Thompson Institute became her new professional home. Leading a passionate team, Emma developed mentorship programs, scholarship opportunities, and training initiatives for young people across Mexico. She traveled to communities, engaged with families, and listened to the stories that shaped her projects. Every decision she made was grounded in the memory of her own beginnings, keeping her deeply connected to the people she sought to help.